Welcome to the Minotaur's Maze. My guest today is Joseph Jones, who is the founder and managing director of EduGrowth, which is an online learning provider specializing in entrepreneurship. He is responsible for the day-to-day operational management of the business and implementing the strategy developed with the board of directors. Prior to starting EduGrowth, Joseph has successfully run 3 businesses in hospitality, property investment, and education. His most notable achievement was being the chief executive and co-founder of an international exam board before it was acquired by an investor in 2016. Joseph, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Zulfikar.
So just tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you started in entrepreneurship and what you went through and where you are today in as briefly as possible, because I'm sure there's so much in that story, but which we'll dive into after the opening introduction.
Yeah, well, I've had 3 main jobs. The first was when I first got out of school, working for Lloyds Bank in a sort of customer service role. During the last recession, as you probably remember, there was a lot of banking redundancies, and I chose to take redundancy then. And it just happened that my brother was finishing university, and another family member, my father, was just finishing something else as well. So we thought that we would start the exam board because we knew there was a market for it. We ran that successfully for about 8 years, I think, before we decided that it was time to move on. Mm-hmm. So we got in touch with various investors and found one who took over the business. After leaving the exam board, we set up a property investment company, which is basically a holding company for some properties myself and my brother own. So that's it just gets sort of left alone. It's like a pension type thing. We had a bar. To be honest, we weren't very good at running a bar. And then after that, I did a little bit of consultancy work in education projects. And then what I wanted to do, I wanted to set up my own business again. And I thought to myself, what are my 2 passions? They are education and entrepreneurship. Hence setting up EduGrowth, which we're just starting off now. And although we've only just launched the products, it seems to be heading in the right direction.
Okay, so talk to us a little bit more about EduGrowth. So what are you, what is the platform, and who are you helping and how are you helping them?
Well, we've got a program which is 18 small modules for people who are helping them to set up a business, and they might be things like managing finance, researching your market, and that type of things. And we provide online coaching, and we provide various materials, including text, videos from entrepreneurs, videos from experts, etc. And the program is very practical. So every module you do, you'll actually come out with something which is useful for your business, like a financial budget or a marketing plan. And there's 2 business models that we have to provide this program. We do it direct to participants, which could be anyone who wants to set up a business, and we'll do that online. We also have what we call delivery partners, where they deliver the program on our behalf. And they may be further education colleges, there could be local councils. We're speaking to people in international locations in terms of, we've got Barcelona, I think Taiwan, just coming on. So they're the two business models.
Excellent. And who's your target audience? Where? So if somebody's watching this, who would be the ideal person to take your platform, and what would the end result be for them?
For the direct participants that we deal with directly, it would be somebody who has a business idea, but maybe doesn't have the business related skills. So for example, it could be somebody who's just lost their job and might be struggling to find another job, but has a business idea which he thinks there's a market for, he or she thinks there's a market for. And then we will support them throughout the process of setting it up, doing the online learning, and then having these outputs which support the business ongoing. And in addition, if they want to continue with the coaching after the program's finished, we can do that as well. So the actual audience is quite broad, but it's just somebody who needs them extra business skills. And we deliberately made the program very short. So each module is only 1 or 2 credits, which can be done in 1 or 2 days, because in the market at the moment, a lot of these business programs, be they an MBA or sort of an NHND, are 1 or 2 years. And while they may be useful for some people, we think that something is short and snappy, which helps them get on with it, would be useful. So they're setting up the business whilst they're doing the program.
Brilliant. And just talk to us then a little bit about your mindset when you first started with your entrepreneurship journey, because it is a roller coaster, and if you're not prepared for it mentally, it can go pretty bad pretty quickly. So talk to us about some of the challenges you faced when you first started. What were they, and how did you continue through those challenges?
When we first started the first business, the exam board, I think the main challenge we found, or the main 2 challenges we found, is we soon realized that we didn't have the skill set to run an exam board effectively. So that affects your mindset when you think you're not giving somebody a good customer experience. Mm-hmm. So what we did is we basically hired people that were more experienced than us in the education sector. The second thing I think about the mindset was we grew very fast initially, and I think you can, I mean, whilst that's good, I think it can affect you mentally when you're working all hours. If you're growing very fast, it's hard to provide excellent customer service. So again, whilst we were successful, you have these additional stresses around you.
And so how did you overcome that? What did you do to get over those, mindset issues and move forward?
Well, as I said, we hired some really experienced people who'd run big multi-million-pound education businesses. We expanded our team, so we were doing less of the operational things. So although we made less money in the short term, it was we'd set the foundations for more success in the long term. And I think in terms of my mindset as well, is that I try to take a step back, so I wasn't working 12 hours a day during the week, most days during the weekend as well. So I think that can really, it sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes working too many hours can be less productive for your company.
Brilliant. And so obviously we talk a lot about leadership in today's market, and you've run businesses, you've been the owner, you've been the operation manager. So what makes an effective leader? Like, and what can you do to develop strong leadership skills?
I think an effective leader, the most important thing for me is to set the tone for your staff, make sure they've got buy-in for your mission and vision. And another thing would be, and as I've previously mentioned, making sure you've got the right team in place, knowing that you're not the person with all the answers. You're the person who's got to make the final say, but you take on board advice from a range of experts before making decisions. So they would be the main two things, I think. In terms of development, I think there's two things. I think I've always had a mentor for the last 10 years, and it's learning from them and taking what they say on board. Again, it has to be you making the final decision, but getting their feedback. And another thing for me is putting your learning into practice. So you don't stop learning when you become a leader. I mean, any course or book I read, I've got a process. I always write 4 or 5 things I'm going to put into action after, and then I review them with my mentor or with other colleagues. So I think that's there's some of the main things about developing yourself as a leader.
Okay, and how much is self-esteem linked with leadership and business? Because we've got an environment where lots of people want to start businesses, but they just don't have the mindset, they don't have the self-esteem, and they don't have the confidence. So how important is self-esteem, and what can you do to develop it to increase your productivity in a business context?
In terms of self-esteem, I think people, and entrepreneurs probably more in particular, tend to beat themselves up a bit when things aren't going right. So what you need to do is, when things do go right, that you reward yourself. You don't hold a party or anything, but you give yourself a pat on the back. Because definitely during the first period of setting up a business, loads of things are going to go wrong. But what you need to do is look, I've come from A to B in a period of time, a few months. Look at all the good things that have happened. And I think it helps to have a positive team around you. And that's just not your business. It might be your family, your friends that you can speak to just as a sounding board. Because very often if you're going over something in your head that you think's going wrong, you'll speak to somebody else who's not involved in the situation, and they'll just help you realize that it's not a huge issue. So again, it's about having a good team, good positive team, patting yourself on the back, and having a sort of sounding board, a positive sounding board.
Okay, and we hear a lot of buzzwords when it comes to business, and one of those is having a business strategy. But what exactly does it mean to have a strategy in business, and what steps should you be taking initially to create a good strategy?
A strategy, and there's loads of subjective definitions of strategy, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
I really like the definition, which is a cohesive set of actions and policies to achieve a required an objective. in terms of how I would structure a strategy, or how I think where a strategy fits within the overall sort of business documentation, is you'll have your vision and your objectives up there, and you'll have your strategy, which is the way you're going to get there. Then underneath that, you'd have your sort of concrete plans and tactics to achieve that. So I think an effective strategy is one that's been researched effectively, one that is cohesive across the organisation. So you don't have one part of the company doing this which doesn't fit with the overall mission, and another part doing something else. I think it has to fit within your resources in terms of people and financial. I mean, I could easily come up with a strategy for a business which required 100 people and 20 million pounds, but it's obviously not achievable. And I think it's reviewing it as well. I mean, particularly with new businesses, they'll create a strategy and a plan and a vision. In almost all cases, they'll pivot after a while. So it's knowing that the strategy is not set in stone. It's a working document.
Okay. And obviously we're going through a period now with obviously COVID, and you know, there's a lot of pain out there. But for somebody who's never started a business before, maybe they're an employee right now, they're fed up, or maybe they've lost their job and they're thinking about starting a business. Like, for somebody who's got no business experience whatsoever, what are the first maybe 3 concrete practical steps they need to take to move forward if they haven't even got an idea?
Well, apart from doing our course, is research. You can, I mean, it doesn't have to be too time consuming, but you can look at different industries and see which ones are going to be big in the future. For example, green energy. That's gonna work. See who the other players are in the industry, and just do a sort of a analysis gap of where there might be a gap in the market. I'll do that first, and then I'd go and speak to experts. Again, you don't necessarily have to pay them initially. They could just be people who are experienced and knowledgeable, and want to give back to people starting their business. And then once you found that gap and you might have an idea, you'd need to look at what resources you need in terms of skills and people and financial. So I think that's 3 things.
Okay, so how would you recommend somebody go about doing that research? Like, you know, everybody tells you to go do research, but you know, if I'm stressed out right now, if I'm struggling and I'm not thinking clearly, and somebody's telling me to do research, and I'm like, what does that mean? So how would you go about actually doing the research, and you know, how would you determine whether something is a good fit for the future, like green energy, if you've got no idea about the industry?
I think there's plenty of free research online. Obviously, you need to make sure that it's valid, because there's lots of stuff online which is not. And so again, I don't think it needs to be that time consuming. Ideally as well, if you're starting out, if you're looking to start a new business, I'd always try and do it with a partner. I think people who set up, if joint founders are much more likely to be successful, and you'll know that they're much more likely to attract venture capital. So yeah, having a partner would be important as well. Somebody who complements your skill set.
Okay, and how would you go about finding a partner that complements your skill set? Like, because a lot of people, they go into business with their friends, or they go into there with their family, and it doesn't quite work out. So what possibly mindset do you need to have? Like what should you be looking for exactly in a partner?
Well, it's difficult because you'd like to know them personally, but you don't want to know them too personally. I mean, I was lucky that I set up my business with my father and brother initially, because we all know that one person was good at that thing, the other person was good at that, the other one was good at marketing, so it worked out fine. Yeah, and that's a really difficult question. I think maybe you could speak to professionals such as your accountant, who's more likely to have more business links than you. So you might know somebody who's done something before in a similar similar industry, and he can introduce you. He'll be able to tell you a little bit about that person, and then obviously you can meet and have a chat and see if you sort of sync together.
Brilliant. Okay. So we've done the research, we've got the idea what we want to do, we've got the partner, we've spoken to the experts now. So we've got the idea, we know what we want to do. What then is the next practical step to get the business off the ground?
The next step would be to do a plan, and I wouldn't do a sort of 3, 4, 5 year plan. I'll just do a plan for say 3 months, which would involve you speaking to potential customers. It might involve doing further analysis. And then after that 3 months, when you've got more information, you know what you think, well, people are interested in our product. And then you would do a longer term plan, and which would help you identify what resources you need. So whether it's viable, because it's best to say after 3 months, no, it's not going to work. Invest hundreds of thousands and just carry on.
Okay. And do you have any tips? Because I know this is a massive question, which I'd say 90% of people, business owners, when they start, they just don't even bother with the plan. So, firstly, how important is the business plan? And secondly, how would you go about creating that plan?
I think it's really important, but I think people go a little bit over the top with it in terms of creating tens and tens of pages of document which they're never going to use. Because the most important thing about a plan is the actual using it afterwards. So you'd want something which has the objectives, it has the resources you need, it has the tasks, says who's going to do them, it says who's going to do them by when, and when they're going to get reviewed. They would be the main things I would have in a plan. Obviously, if you're going to investors, they may want something a bit more detailed. But if it's just you at the beginning, or you and a partner, I'd keep it as simple as possible, but details enough so it's useful. Okay,
and you just talked about investors there. So at what point would you consider getting outside investment? And how long would you go testing the market yourself before you approach an investor? Because there are those that want an investor straight away, and then there are those that don't want an investor ever because they don't want to get rid of equity. So obviously it's a difficult question to answer without being specific, but in general terms, if you are starting a business, when should you possibly think about bringing in an investor?
I think it depends on the type of business. If you're developing, say, a new technology, which there's nothing like that in the market, and you're not going to be taking any revenue for 3 months, I'd go for seed investment more or less straight away. If it's more sort of standard business, I think you're going to need to prove that you're offering something different and creating revenue before you go to investors. So, for example, if I was opening up a chain of bars, which I'm not going to do, I think I'd need to make them profitable for a certain period of time before an investor's going to invest. But if I was going to create the latest app which could read people's minds, then I'd go straight away to investors. And again, people like your accountant can help you with that. And there's different options in terms of crowdfunding, obviously going to your bank if you didn't want to give equity away, or venture capitalists.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about some of, if you can provide some concrete examples of, some of the, the biggest challenges that you faced in business. What happened? What was the result? What was the impact on your mindset? And then what you did to come out of that difficult challenge or period or obstacle that you faced.
I mentioned that in our first business that we were growing very fast for the first 2 or 3 years, I think. Then there was a regulatory change by the UK government, which basically got rid of 50% of our revenue overnight, which can obviously be really, really stressful. It's especially when you've got a team of people and they've got to pay wages as well. So you don't just think about yourself. I think in terms of what we did, and it took time. We lost money for a little while.
So before you move on to what you did, like I want to know, like, as much detail as you're confident in sharing, like what was the impact on your mindset? Like, were you worried? Were you stressed? Were you panicking, or were you relatively calm? Like, what was the impact on you as an individual?
Well, yeah, I was stressed. I was thinking that we've created something that was good, and it could be gone within a few months. And it was an organisation that I was passionate about and had put loads of effort into. So seeing if that went sort of down the drain, then it would have been it would have affected me a lot more mentally. But again, I think it helps having a team who is pragmatic and knowledgeable. So after an initial panic, we sat down, we looked at the market, and we thought the overall market, not the part that we were losing, and we identified, okay, there's a gap here. We'll try doing that, and that worked. So again, it took time to get to the new market, explain our products, and get the customers and the revenue. But it was a worrying time. But after the initial worry, you sort of sit down with your team and work out an action plan.
So I mean, that's great advice for people right now. Obviously, with COVID, a lot of people have lost a lot of business. Some are struggling to pivot, others have pivoted. Like, what advice do you have for those who haven't quite pivoted yet, but they're struggling because of COVID? Like, how important is it to pivot? And what can they do to possibly find a gap in the market, or what should they do to pivot and bring in maybe a new business idea? Is it a new product? What should they be doing?
It's difficult because if you're in that position, it's you don't want to judge these people, because it's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the key thing is, for me, is to you will panic some of the time, but you just have to admit that. But people, it's not like people aren't constantly in one state of mind, are they? They know that they'll have certain parts of the week or days where they can concentrate and think about either pivoting or developing a completely new product. I think what you need to check before is this a short-term thing, or is my industry going to be permanently affected? If it's a short-term thing and you have the cash to get through it, you might just want to do that, possibly reduce your costs for the short term, which frankly may mean losing people. But for the longer term of the business, that's something you have to consider. But if the business if the industry that you're in is just, let's say, completely going down the drain, then you have to think about pivoting. And pivoting doesn't necessarily have to mean pivoting your product. It could be pivoting your market. I mean, if, for example, there's the UK economy is not doing great at the moment. We know that. But your products may work in the Asian markets, for example, which are doing better, and some of them have a particular affinity to UK products and services in certain industries because of historical ties. I mean, that's just an example that I would consider if the UK market wasn't doing well. And I'm sure the government will have incentives for international trade.
Okay, and obviously with all the problems going on with COVID, with Brexit, and all of the other stuff going on, with the layoffs, the redundancies, the rising debt levels, like, why would you want to be an entrepreneur in this environment? Is it still worth being an entrepreneur? And what are the benefits, or are all of these problems just too much and it's just not worth considering at this moment in time until the dust settles?
I mean, for me, if you've got the right knowledge and skills to become an entrepreneur, it can be really rewarding. And I mean, it can be rewarding financially, and let's be honest, it can be. But the main thing for me is building something that's your own. And as long as you get the right support in place, then you can do that. And I think, to be honest, some people might not have a choice at the moment because the jobs market is as we know, is not doing very well at all.
Brilliant. And so moving forward, then obviously you've got your business, you've started. What specific steps are you taking to grow your business in this climate?
Well, we're marketing internationally. So what we're doing with we think there's a market in the UK, definitely, and it's obviously our home market, and we want to support people in our home market. But we're not putting all our eggs in that basket. So, we're talking to institutions in Asia, parts of Europe, as well as the UK. And what we do is, rather than do blanket marketing, we try and reach out to people directly, because when you're selling, particularly to our delivery partner, education institutions, when you're selling our product, which if they have, say, 100 learners, it's going to be quite a lot of money for them. They wouldn't normally respond to just a generic email. I think it's slightly different for direct participants, which is it's obviously much more affordable for an individual, and there's pricing plans and that type of thing. So mainly that's what we're doing through that is we're just in the process of launching free access to part of the course. So that basically gives people a taster. We've got some sort of free assessment tools that people can use. So I think it's about what we're trying to do is give people a flavour of what they could do with the longer program, and obviously if they find what we can offer good, then they'll sign up for the main thing. The marketing I've tried in them before, which hasn't worked, is basically this is our course, buy it now. It's just that sort of marketing. It might have worked a few years ago, but people want to see value before they buy, I think, now.
Okay, so for a UK business that doesn't really have an online presence, they've not got any international reach, how would they go about actually approaching an international audience? Like what steps can they actually take in practical terms without the jargon and the hype? Like what can an owner do right now to reach out to an international audience, partner, provider, etc.?
But I know the Department for International Trade can offer a lot of support, and it's even things like searching through LinkedIn for people and reaching out through that, and just saying that we've got this product, we think it can really support what you do, that sort of way. And people, they're more likely to, as I say, respond to a personal communication that you've thought about your product's fit for whatever they offer than a generic email.
So what's your process there to make sure it's a personal message? Because obviously on LinkedIn, on Facebook, whichever platform, we're all bombarded with message after message after message. So what can you do to make your message effective, personal, and stand out, and ensure that you get a response rather than get ignored like the 50 other messages that we get?
I think, although it's a bit more time consuming, you need to look at that organisation. I mean, for example, I get emails about my company's mortgage and LinkedIn messages, and we don't have a mortgage, so they obviously haven't done any research. So I think it's looking at an organisation's website, seeing what they offer, and trying to match your product to them. It's slightly different for if you're dealing with individual consumers. In that case, I would advise that you get partners who know the local markets, and these could be agents, they could be other organisations. You'd want to interview them to make sure that they know what they're talking about, and they'll sell your product in an ethical way.
Okay, and would you recommend they go direct to the individual on LinkedIn, or should they go through the company channel by email or by phone call? Like, to get the fastest results, what is the fastest way to make things happen?
In terms of getting hold of a company,
or to generate new business, or to pivot? Like, obviously this is a UK company right now, they've got no online presence, they don't know much about the online world, but they're now obviously in a place where they need to reach an international audience. So whether it's a company, whether it's customers, like what is the fastest route? Is it approaching people individually on social media? Is it trying to go to the board of directors? What should they be focusing on?
I don't think there's any hard and fast rule, but I think statistically, people are more likely to respond if you've got some sort of connection with them on LinkedIn. So it might, rather than sending a generic email. So you might want to invite them on LinkedIn, get them to like your company page, so they'll gradually get to see your branding. I mean, that's what I would do, but also try and develop associates or agents in different countries.
And the company that you sold to an investor, what did you do to that company? Like, what was the most appealing part, and you know, what can other businesses do to prepare their business for to make it attractive for an investor to come and buy it?
I guess at that point we were consistently making profit and gaining new customers. So it's a consistency. We were a mature company, so we had all the policies and processes in place. So because when investors come to you, if everything's a mess, then it's going to really put them off, because they'll think, well, if it's a mess now, it could be a mess in the future. So would I want to put X amount of money in?
So did you make the decision that you were going to sell to an investor, or were you approached simply because of what the company was doing?
We'd made a decision, so we won't go into too many details.
Okay, okay. And how was the process? Because obviously I'm in the M&A field, in the buying and selling. You know, selling a business can be a massive headache, and lots of things can go wrong. How was the process for you? Obviously, in general terms, how was the process for you? And somebody who's thinking about selling their business, whether to an investor or to somebody else, what advice do you have for them for the process of actually selling the business?
Seek professional advice. That'd be the first thing, and they'll take you through the process in more detail. But I think it's, before you try and sell, make sure your company is in order, make sure that what documentation's in order, make sure the customers are happy, and make sure you're regularly generating income. Then you approach an investor, a professional advisor. They'll tell you what documentation you'd need to produce, and in some cases that advisor will be able to reach out to investors. If the investors like the look of your pitch deck, then there'll be further communication and negotiation. You also want to, I mean, obviously you want to sell the company for cash, but you also need to consider whether the investor is the right fit for your company, because it might be something that you've spent years developing, which you don't want to see sort of destroyed.
Okay. How was the process for you? Was it very stressful? Was it smooth? Did it take a long time? Was it relatively quick?
It was relatively quick. I mean, we had a prior knowledge of the investor, and they were in our industry, so we knew that they were sort of well respected, etc. I mean, there were other people that we spoke to before who obviously didn't understand what we're doing, because we were in quite a niche industry. They would come up with crazy figures in terms of evaluation, which unless you're knowledgeable of the industry and you know the potential earnings, then it's difficult to explain to people.
Okay. And, you know, when should a business owner plan their exit? When should they prepare for it? Because, you know, if you look at some of the statistics, there's millions of businesses for sale right now, and something like 14% actually have an exit plan or a succession plan in place. Firstly, how important is it to have an exit plan, and how early should that plan start to come into fruition?
I don't know, but I suppose it's a lot of businesses, when they start up, they don't really have an intention to sell. Most of them, they think they'll carry on forever. But as you know, people's lives change, don't they, after a few years? So I think once the the company is stable, then you would start looking at an action plan, an exit plan. There's no point writing an exit plan when you in the first 2 months of your business. I think you also want a succession plan, because a lot of the time investors won't want to run the company. So you'll want to have people in your team who you're developing, so they could possibly take over if you depart.
Brilliant.
You also need to build in that once you sell, the investor may want you to stay on for a while to make sure everything is smooth.
Brilliant. And obviously, think about wrapping up now. So just tell us a little bit about your why right now. Why are you doing what you're doing? And how important is it to have a strong why for your business?
I think my whys and the business's whys are more or less the same. As I said earlier in the interview, two of my passions are business and education. So if my organisation can help, develop 1,000 successful new businesses over the next few years, then that would be a perfect why for me. Another why is about developing others. So although we've got a small team at the moment as we're just starting out, we'll be taking on more people over the next few months, and it's making sure that we've got development plans in place to help them really sort of develop and prosper.
And, you've started a business in COVID in a very difficult time. Like, how has the business done in that period? Has it been affected negatively? Has it obviously with people looking online now with more free time, has it been a positive in terms of for your business itself? Like, how has the experience been in this COVID period?
Yeah, I think it's been I don't know, I suppose our product could do well during this period because people will have lost their jobs and may want to set up a new business. I think with the delivery partner side, earlier in the year, it was obviously hard to speak to them because they were dealing with a lot of issues. But yeah, we've recently had lots of interest. So the future is bright, I think, and we think we've got a good product. So yeah.
Right. And how can people find out more about you and your product? Where can they go specifically to get more information?
Oh, you can look at both of our products at our website, and you can contact us through there, and that's www.edugrowth.co.uk, which is growth.co.uk. And we'd be happy to be contacted if people have got queries.
Brilliant. I will drop the link below the video for that website, so if you can send me that, that's brilliant. And before we just wrap up, do you have any final words of encouragement or advice for people out there right now, obviously in this COVID period? What would you say to them?
I'd say that the situation, we know it's difficult, but I don't think there's any point in pretending. Whatever you're doing, whether it's trying to find a new job or trying to set up a business, make sure you do it systematically and as positively as you can. And don't, I've done it in the past, when something bad's happened, you shut the door and ignore the world, but try not to do that, reach out to people.
Excellent. Brilliant advice. Well, Joseph, thank you. It's been a pleasure interviewing you. Thank you for your time. I'm sure people found a lot of value. As for the audience, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode. Take care now. Bye-bye.